Welcome everyone to Decorative Arts Sampler at the Concord Museum. I'm Erica Loam, Curatorial Associate.
I'm David Wood, Curator.
And today we're looking at metals. A reminder that these sessions are being recorded and that we will send you a recording after the course is over. And if you have a question, feel free to enter it into the chat or wave your hand and we will bring you up to ask it to us in person. So let's get started. When it comes to higher quality metals like silver, you're not necessarily getting them imported in sheets, or in other types of forms. What they're coming to the colonies as, they're coming as coins and as currency. So how are you getting those raw materials to create these vessels? Well, they start as this. And it is the work of multiple people in the colonies to weigh and measure and evaluate the value of coinage in order to assess how the purity of the silver and then how much of it you can use to make something like this.
So this is a good example of the at least two-part nature of a goldsmith's work. These are called noble metals. They're called precious metals. Noble because it doesn't oxidize readily. Silver, gold, those are noble metals. And they're used as currency and have been since 7th, 8th century before the Common Era in the West, and far. That's for coinage, where you've got a piece of a particular weight, you know what it is, you know what the metal's worth, you can use this as a medium of exchange. Tremendously valuable for the trade networks set up across from Europe to China. You have to have a medium of exchange that works all the way across the line, and silver works well for that. So a goldsmith is responsible for this precious metal, and they pretty early on you get what are called goldsmith bankers in Boston, where the beginnings of banking, of credit, of bills of credit. It's a goldsmith's work. So a goldsmith, and that's part of why the guild is so strict. We're going to look at guild structure in a second because these are valuable. But I wanted to look closely at these two coins for a second, just to make a point. This one is what's called Cobb Coinage, and they weren't really meant to be coins at all. This is the way the metal is shipped. So this is mined in Chile in a horrific process that maybe we'll go over in another program. This is mined and then it's coined into these planchets, these flat discs, in the New World before being put into barrels, put on a ship, sent back to Spain. You can see that it's rough on the edges, it's been clipped out, and yet if you put these in a scale, we're going to look at a scale in a moment, they are the same weight. So this is 8 reales, this is 8 reales. But here the coining is it's slightly different in its intent. This is a coin meant to circulate as currency, and in order to keep people from clipping the valuable metal off, you've got this on the edge. So that's going to tell you right away if somebody clips it. This one's got a clipped edge already. That's the way it left the New World. So how can you tell if somebody cut another piece off? You'd have to weigh it. This one, maybe you can trust that milled edge. So this is called a Spanish milled dollar. And this was the standard for currency in America, but these are also the sorts of things that are providing the raw metal for making a larger piece.
Right, and until 1792, with the establishment of the U.S. Mint, foreign coinage circulated widely and freely in the U.S. colonies, and essentially any dry goods merchant or goldsmith, silversmith would have been able to essentially weigh and measure and then be able to convert these foreign coins into a sort of something legible and something understood. And so this is a set of scales that belonged to a dry goods merchant, correct?
Yes, these are
In
John
Concord.
White's.
John White in Concord. And so essentially, if you shopped at John White's dry goods shop, you would have brought in your various coinage, and then he had
Spanish milled dollar,
perhaps, and then he would have been able to weigh it, and then there was a conversion chart attached to the scales here. We have a close-up photo of that conversion chart, which allowed you to essentially reckon with all of these different currencies and be able to essentially assess the value.
Right. So somebody comes in with a coin, you don't know if it's been clipped, you don't know what it is. So you have to identify it. Very often coins have got the information on it. You can figure out what it is. And you use the scales to weigh them. And then here's the chart. So if it's a guinea, you know what it's supposed to weigh, and you know what it's worth. And then you can compare that with a moidor, d'or, which is a Portuguese coin, or with a doubloon, which is a Spanish coin, and you know what they're supposed to weigh, and you know what they're worth. So this is the merchant. This is at the point of sale. A goldsmith is doing many of the same things, but a couple of steps before, and got into some of the goldsmiths got into the habit of storing other people's gold for them, very valuable material, and that again is how they got into the banking business.
And a point of clarification, goldsmiths and silversmiths worked interchangeably with the same types of metals. So a goldsmith would work with silver, a silversmith might work with gold. Goldsmith, of course, carries a more prestigious connotation to it, so you would want to be referred to as a goldsmith in most cases, even though you're working with both.
Right. The guild is the goldsmiths guild, and that, but it's true that many of the members never worked in gold. I mean, gold is definitely a step up there.
So if you're a silversmith working in America, this is how you're getting your raw materials, and then from that, there's a whole process that it takes to create this.
Right. So the coinage like that is one source for the metal, but also, just like with pewter, these things have catastrophes. So here is a broken pair of sugar tongs, not scissors to cut the stuff up. These are the tongs you use at table to serve them. Pretty little things, but one of the handles is broken off. Now, what are you going to do with it? Well, you could carry it to the silversmith to get your next pair of sugar tongs, for instance. And the metal is a big part of the cost of any one of these finished products, usually more than the cost of making. For something complicated like a teapot, if you look at Paul Revere's account books, often on a teapot, the cost of the metal is about the same as the cost of the fabrication. For a simpler piece, the cost of the metal might be 3 or 5 times as much as the cost of the making. So the metal is where you're going to start. You might take all these little bits that you've got, stuff in your shop, stuff your customer brings in. You're going to melt the stuff down and cast it into an ingot like this. And can we see that Diderot?
Sure. We'll show you what the inside of a colonial silver workshop looked like.
Yeah, well, this is actually a Parisian shop, so it's pretty big. There are not too many operations this big in the colonies, but Diderot is showing us a variety of the operations here. It's quite valuable or quite a valuable resource in that regard. So you can see the fellow pouring something liquid into a piece there. He's casting metal. The forge is behind them, so the metal is melted and then poured out into a mold that's going to give you a thing like this. It's going to give you an ingot. And then the two fellows busy at the anvil are pounding that ingot out into a disc of silver. And that disc of silver is being worked on the anvil on the right here, on a stake set in an anvil. And you see the fellow with the hammer there is raising, this is called raising the sheet up into a cylindrical form from which you can make whatever it is that you're going to make. In this case, we've brought along a coffee pot as an indicator. It's got some cast parts. It's got a cast foot. It's got a raised body. But this, a piece like this, takes about this much silver, a little less than this much silver. Actually, there would be enough left for about 4 tablespoons to make 4 tablespoons after you're done making a coffee pot from an ingot like this. But it's got to go through all those steps. You've got to get the metal. Well, somebody has to mine the metal. You get the metal, cast it into an ingot, hammer it out, raise it up, and
this is one of the trades where you would have had a more structured apprenticeship system. So a young man, maybe as young as 8 to 10 years old, would have begun, and maybe they were the one with the bellows blowing oxygen into the fire.
Yeah, there are many operations that a relatively unskilled worker can do in a shop for years, or maybe for an entire career. Or you can move through the hierarchy, but apprentices are doing things like filing things up and then sweeping up the filings and stuff like that. And then it's the more skilled workers who are often journeymen, that is, they have the skills, but they don't have the tools, they're doing the heavy lifting. So the fellows that we saw in the Diderot engraving, it's safe to think of them as journeymen, wage workers, really. Jour means day, so you're working by the day.